What's good, you guys? Your boy Ben Mahari here, represent Mahari Nation Sports Podcast here, guys. I hope you having a good afternoon, you know what I mean, or evening, whatever you guys are at, though, man. And much love to my subscribers, man, and also to my LDBC brothers as too as well, though, man. And before I get into this video, I want to personally congratulate Russell Westbrook for passing the great Oscar Robertson on the all-time careers list in triple doubles. He finally surpassed Oscar Robertson last night with his 181st career triple double when he scored 33 points, 19 rebounds, and 15 assists in an overtime victory against the Indiana Pacers. That Saturday, you know, he yeah. On that Saturday, he tied Oscar Robertson career for the career triple double just with 180, and now he basically surpassed him with 181 career triple doubles, and that is an amazing accomplishment, and it pretty much guarantees him a lock into the Basketball Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? So enjoy it while you see it now because you're probably not going to see this for a very long time. So congratulations to Russell Westbrook on that. But I want to particularly talk about the issues that have been going on with the Los Angeles Lakers. You know, the Lakers right now have been basically on a debt. I've been on a tailspin. With all the injuries that's been going on with them this season. I mean, as of right now, they're basically our seventh in the Western Conference, and the playoffs are coming up soon. So they're going to have to play in one of those play-in games to guarantee to basically get themselves back into the playoff mix. And you know, in the last week, they were basically 3-7, and when you look at both of their home and away records, at both 19 and 15, you know, equally. Um, as of right now, the Lakers are basically the long shot of basically defending their championship. And the way I see the problem with the Lakers is that the way that the roster was basically structured to start the season. They lost JaVale McGee, they lost Dwight Howard, and they let Rajon Rondo walk. And they brought in Dennis Schroeder, they brought in Marcus Saul to try to basically fill in those spots. You know what I'm saying? And then later on, they brought in Andre Drummond, and I saw a lot of Laker fans jump for joy when basically Andre Drummond was brought in. And I said to myself that, and not just to myself, but another friend of mine that at my workplace pretty much said that we're not going to win the championship with Andre Drummond on the team. And guess what? He's right because the fact is that Andre Drummond is not a guy that you have to count on in an actual NBA game because his game is not suited for this team. He's basically a guy that doesn't stretch the floor. All right, he doesn't space the offense. He's a terrible post up player. All right, he does give you rebounds and some defense, but he's not a perfect fit for this particular team. You know what I'm saying? And they have not improved afterwards. Now, and then also you brought in Montrezl Harrell, and Montrezl Harrell this year has had a very much a down year. Since leaving, the LA Clippers. So everything everything that has happened to the Lakers this year has really much gone to fail. Then you add the fact that they've had injury problems with AD, who's pretty much injured riddled throughout his entire career, and then LeBron James with his ankle issues. You know what I mean? They pretty much have been on a dead spin in the second half of the season, and this is the wrong time to do that because the playoffs are coming up soon. You know what I mean? And now you're basically have to try to ride the course and try to get it going in the midst of the playoffs, and that's very difficult to do. And the other thing that I find people talking about is that the Lakers could probably pull off something that the Rockets did in 1995 when they came up as a sixth seed, you know, and won the NBA championship. But here's the problem with that comparison. Okay, they too were the defending champions too, right? And they made a bold trade getting Clyde Drexler. All right, after basically starting off with a 9-0 start, then they went on a horrible losing streak. But then even after the All Star break, when they acquired Clyde Drexler from the Houston from the Portland Trailblazers for their trade away Otis Thorpe, who was their starting power forward on that championship team in '94. I mean, they still weren't they weren't still they still weren't winning consistently. I should say, they went on a 17-18 record after the trade. You know what I mean? Then Olajuwon went down for about a couple of weeks with amnesia. Okay, and they went on to a 47-35 record. And remember this, they because of the Drexler trade, okay, because of the Drexler trade, Vernon Maxwell had to play off the bench. And you know Vernon Maxwell, he hates going off the bench, right? And they were basically lost the last 3 games of the regular season and basically had to go into the playoffs on a downer, right? And then they had to go up against the Utah Jazz that won 60 games in the regular season. All right. And through thick and thin, they had to basically scrap and claw against the Utah Jazz in a 5 game series. And if you look back at that schedule, you know, leaving the playoff, thing is just a second here. They lost their last 3 games in the regular season, twice against the Jazz, right? And then after that, I mean, in game one, when they had a chance to win the game, when Vernon Maxwell missed a 3-pointer to win the game and didn't even play that many minutes. All right, Vernon Maxwell pretty much had it because he felt disrespected. He wasn't getting the normal playing time that he was accustomed to getting, and pretty much patted his back and said, "You know what, f this, I'm out of here." And he never came back to the team. But in a sense, it turned out to be a good thing because it finally opened up the rotation on the guard positions. All right, for the guys like Mario Elie and Sam Cassell to get more minutes, and they actually played a huge difference in their championship run. And so they came back, beat the Utah Jazz in 5 games. Then they had to come back from a 3-1 deficit against the Phoenix Suns. And at game 5, you remember Clyde Drexler was also had the Hassel had the flu. He basically was sick and didn't even and basically was ineffective, but he was very effective defensively when Wesley Persons almost hit the 3-pointer to win the game, and they went on the win in overtime. And then in game 7, they had to scrap and claw again, despite the fact that Kevin Johnson had 46 points and 10 assists in that game. He was just tearing up the Rockets. I mean, they beat the Suns in 7 games. Then they went on to beat the Spurs in 6 when Olajuwon basically outclassed David Robinson that whole series. All right, it was just the way that Olajuwon dominated against Robinson was magnificent. I mean, 35 and a half points per game compared to Robinson's what's it, 27, I think, 20 25. No, yeah, it was 25. Yes, 25. Then they go to the finals and then they swept the Magic, and the rest was history. But the point I'm trying to make to you is that they still had favorable matchups because they had the ultimate solution in Akeem. Now, the ultimate solution for the Lakers, on the other hand, is LeBron James. All right, the difference with that Rockets run compared to what the Lakers are going to try to attempt to doing is because the Rockets were able to still have the same familiar roles on the team that they were accustomed to doing the previous year when they won the championship against the Knicks. Unfortunately for the Lakers, because of the new pieces that they acquired, they still weren't able to figure out where the rotations are. I mean, there's some games I've watched this year, through the games I've been able to watch with the Lakers this year, where Kyle Kuzma doesn't get much playing time. I mean, his defense is pretty much slacked completely. He was never good at defensive player, but it's gotten even worse. What I mean? Kentavious Caldwell Pope is pretty much their most consistent guard off your bench. So you add all of that. The Dennis Schroeder's inconsistency throughout the whole year. Now he's pretty much pouting into the fact that he's not been getting a lot of playing time or whatever. But listen, I pretty much said to myself that Dennis Schroeder to me is more of a bench player than a starter. And right now, you're seeing that right here and now. I do believe that the loss of Rajon Rondo hurt the Lakers a lot more than what they really believe. Because say what you want to say about Rondo, but Rondo is a coach on the floor and a hard leader. And he would have basically kept the team organized through all the chaos and basically kept the team in line. You know what I mean? And you lost that key component when you let Rondo walk in free agency. And so right now, if you're the Lakers, you're still trying to figure things out what their rotations are, and you're not certain if LeBron's health and AD's health is going to get there in time for the playoffs. Because right now, as you look at the Western Conference right now, in my view, the Western Conference right now, is either between the Jazz and the Spurs or the Clippers right now. Even the Nuggets right now, they're starting to play a little bit better after losing Jamal Murray for the remainder of the season with a knee injury. But I don't think the Nuggets are going to be good enough, to win a championship because without Jamal Murray, they're not going to be anything, despite the fact of what Nikola Jokic has done throughout the year. And so look at Nikola Jokic too. He's my vote for MVP. But right now, the Lakers are are up against it here, guys. They're pretty much up against it, and if they don't find a way, to recover and get themselves together in time for the playoffs, this is going to be a very disappointing, end to a very much a season that was filled with championship level expectations. They were supposed to become back to back NBA champions, and they still can. I'm not sitting here and saying that they can't do it, but the road to get there is going to be very, very difficult. You know what I mean? But the one thing I know about LeBron James is simple as this. LeBron does not want to leave himself humiliated or lose, on off his shield. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to count out the Lakers to try to turn things around, but if they're going to make a playoff, if they're going to make a push, they better start doing it in that play-in game because if they lose, it's going to be a long off season. And the media critics, even though there's still a lot of media people that are still on the Lakers bandwagon, you know what I mean? It's going to be a long summer for those Lakers. And there's going to be a lot of questions about if LeBron or AD are going to stay on the team, or if they are going to stay on the team. Also, what roster moves that they can make to try to, eliminate some of the problems that we're having during the entire season. So we're going to see what happens. We're going to definitely see what happens. That's why the playoffs are going to see who the real men and who are the weak. You know what I mean? So that's just my 2 cents. You let me know what you think in the comment section below. And with that, I'm out. Peace.